Hello to everyone watching, and welcome to my new channel called the Uncovered Files Expose. This is a new channel. I was kind of bored, and I was just looking up stuff, and I figured, hey, this would make a pretty good YouTube video. So I made a channel, and you're going to see my first ever video. This is going to be about some things that schools did in the 1940s to about the 1950s, maybe the 70s, and what they do today. So, let's dive in. So apparently in the late 1940s and early 1950s, researchers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Quaker Oats conducted nutrition experiments on 74 young boys at the Fernald State School in Massachusetts. These children, many of whom had intellectual disabilities or were wards of the state, were fed oatmeal and milk laced with radioactive iron and calcium tracers without their informed consent. Radioactive iron. Yeah. They were told that they were in a science club. They were the science project, more or less. To ensure participation, researchers invited the boys to join a science club. Members were enticed with perks like extra portions of food, parties, Mickey Mouse watches, and trips to the Boston Red Sox baseball games at Fenway Park. The project was led by MIT nutrition professor Robert Harris. The study aimed to track how the body absorbs nutrients. Specifically, Quaker Oats wanted to prove their oatmeal was nutritionally superior to rival Farina cereals like Cream of Wheat. How does feeding kids radioactive oatmeal at all help you prove that it's nutritionally superior? I don't see how. Like, what if they just die on you and then from the radioactivity and you're like, it's superior? Doesn't make any sense. The boys consumed minute amounts of radioactive isotopes, while researchers later claimed the doses were equivalent to roughly 30 consecutive chest X-rays. Levels, they argued, were below safety limits. Some boys were also directly injected with radioactive calcium to study its movement into the bloodstream and bones. The experiments remained largely unknown until the 1990s, when a federal investigation into Cold War-era radiation testing uncovered declassified documents. In 1995, President Bill Clinton issued a formal apology to the survivors after a presidential task force found that while the radiation likely caused no long-term health damage, the experiments were a gross violation of human rights and ethical standards. In 1998, MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Quaker Oats agreed to a $1.85 million settlement to resolve a class action lawsuit filed by former students. Quaker Oats settled without admitting any wrongdoing. The Fernald experiments are now cited as a landmark case of unethical human experimentation, highlighting the exploitation of vulnerable populations who could not provide informed consent. This case, along with others uncovered in the 1990s, led to stricter federal regulations regarding medical research involving children. Those others, I'm going to get into another one of those. But, how did they admitted no wrongdoing? Okay. The next one is from the late 1940s. Again, in the late 1940s, researchers at Vanderbilt University conducted a nutrition study, another nutritional one, that involved secretly giving radioactive iron cocktails to pregnant women, marketed as vitamin drinks. These solutions were part of a government-sponsored experiment to track iron absorption, which later became a major national scandal. And just to make it clear, this is a university. And back here, the Fernald State School. Both are schools, so became a major national scandal. From 1945 to 1947, the study was conducted by the Tennessee Vanderbilt Nutrition Project, a collaboration between Vanderbilt University, the Tennessee Department of Public Health, and the Rockefeller Foundation. Really healthy. Department of Health. That's nice and healthy. Giving people radioactive drinks. It's all ridiculous. Approximately 829 pregnant women were seeking free prenatal care at Vanderbilt's clinic, were selected. Many were poor or working class white women. Women were given oral doses of radioactive iron, Fe59. Researchers called these vitamin drinks, or cocktails, and did not disclose that they contained radioactive isotopes. The stated goal was to study how quickly iron was absorbed by the mother and passed to the fetus to help establish nutritional guidelines for iron deficiency anemia. The doses were roughly 30 times higher than natural background radiation, equivalent to a modern medical X-ray. The participants were never told they were part of a radiation experiment or warned of potential risks to themselves or their unborn children. A follow-up study in the 1960s found a statistically significant increase in cancer among the children exposed in the utero. At least 3 children died from rare or aggressive cancers, including an 11-year-old girl, Carolyn Busey, who died of a tumor, and a 5-year-old boy who died of lymphatic leukemia. Even after the follow-up study showed higher cancer rates, Vanderbilt did not inform the mothers of the findings. Many original records were later destroyed in the 1970s. They didn't tell the mothers of the findings because they were like, well, now they're not going to let us give them our radioactive drinks. We want to give them our radioactive drinks. We need more study. The truth came to light in 1993 after Energy Secretary Hazel O'Leary declassified documents regarding Cold War-era human radiation experiments. Lead plaintiff Emma Kraft, whose daughter died of cancer in 1959, filed a class action lawsuit against Vanderbilt and the Rockefeller Foundation. In 1998, Vanderbilt and the Rockefeller Foundation agreed to a $10.3 million settlement. As part of the settlement, Vanderbilt issued a formal apology to the women and their families. There are some other related studies. I wish I searched this for a video, but I'm not going to do it right now. But apparently a elementary school experiment happened. A separate 1945 study at Vanderbilt involved giving 188 elementary school children lemonade laced with radioactive iron for similar nutritional research. This was part of a broader trend of unethical human radiation experimentation in the US, which included feeding radioactive oatmeal to disabled children at MIT, like I told you guys earlier, and injecting plutonium into hospital patients. That's new. And this is not really to do with radiation, but it happened at another school. The Willowbrook hepatitis experiments from 1956 to 1971 were a series of controversial medical studies conducted on children with intellectual disabilities at the Willowbrook State School in Staten Island, New York, led by pediatrician Dr. Saul Krugman. The research involved deliberately infecting healthy children with hepatitis to study the disease's transmission and test the effectiveness of gamma globulin as a treatment, basically using them as guinea pigs to test their medicine. Willowbrook was a state-run institution notorious for overcrowding and inhumane conditions. By the 1960s, it housed over 6,000 residents in a facility designed for 4,000. Hepatitis was rampant. It was estimated that 100% of residents contracted the virus within 6 months of arrival due to poor sanitation and fecal-oral contact. How the fecal-oral contact happened? You're going to find out. Dr. Krugman's justification. Dr. Krugman argued that since the infection was inevitable, it was better for the children to be infected in a controlled, well-staffed research ward where they would receive better care than in the general population. Over 700 children participated in studies split into two primary methodologies. Methodologies. I'm sorry. Methodologies. Methodologies. Sorry, thank you. Researchers fed children a solution of local strains of live hepatitis virus, sometimes mixed into chocolate milk. Antibody testing. Some children were given injections of gamma globulin before being infected to see if it provided immunity or lessened the severity of the illness. The study successfully distinguished between hepatitis A, infectious, and hepatitis B, serum-based, and proved that gamma globulin could prevent or mitigate the disease. This work later paved the way for modern hepatitis vaccines. As if that makes it okay. The experiments are now a hallmark case study in bioethics due to several major violations. And I'm going to tell you something. The local strains of live hepatitis virus came from hepatitis patients' feces. That's where it came from. You can search it. And I'm going to give you the sources to where I got all this information. Google. But if you want to look for more sources than that, I'll give them to you at the end. While parents signed consent forms, many were under duress, As the main school reached capacity, the hepatitis unit was often the only way for parents to secure a spot for their children, creating a Faustian bargain. The subjects were children with mental disabilities who could not personally consent. Critics noted that 1,000 adult staff members were never used as test subjects, despite also being at risk. Ethics experts like Henry Beecher argued that instead of experimenting on the children, doctors had a moral duty to fix the unsanitary conditions causing the outbreaks. There was an expose in 1972 by journalist Geraldo Rivera, which conducted a televised expose, Willowbrook, The Last Disgrace, which showed the public the horrific reality of the school. So, if you want to find out more, watch his televised expose. And I will give you more sources at the end. Now, apparently in schools today, as of 2026, well, not as of 2026, but before and still ongoing, schools increasingly rely on educational technology, EdTech, that frequently suffers from security vulnerabilities, potentially exposing sensitive student data like addresses and medical records. So it's not safe for your kids. Personally, I recommend homeschooling. That's what my family does for me, and it works really well. So for all you parents out there, homeschooling. Schools increasingly rely on educational technology, EdTech, that frequently suffers from security vulnerabilities, potentially exposing sensitive school data like addresses and medical records. Research indicates that approximately 96% of educational apps share student data with third parties, often for digital marketing or advertising. Furthermore, surveillance tools designed for safety often monitor students 24 hours a week, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even on personal devices and home networks, which can lead to significant privacy violations. Many school systems are under-resourced in cybersecurity, leaving them vulnerable to various attacks. Cybercriminals target schools specifically for personally identifiable information, PII, to engage in identity theft, extortion, or to sell data on the dark web. In one major 2021 breach, a hacker used a former employee's credentials to access records of 10.1 million students, including mailing addresses and health information. Poorly secured Wi-Fi and take-home devices, laptops/tablets, often lack adequate protection, providing easy entry points for unauthorized access. Schools often adopt platforms without a fully IT security review. Some vendors have been found storing student data in plain text on public-facing servers. The expansion of safety technology has led to constant monitoring that many advocates argue violates student privacy rights. Software like GoGuardian and Gaggle can track web searches, screen content, and even emotional cues. If a student uses a school account or school-issued device at home, their activity, including private messages or sensitive health searches, may still be logged and flagged for administrators. Nearly 30% of students reported being outed to school officials as a result of digital activity monitoring. Surveillance can also flag students for seeking reproductive or gender affirming care information. I don't care about that. Gender affirming care. If you're a boy, you're a boy. If you're a girl, you're a girl. I'm sorry. No way around it. And you shouldn't be having babies at 14, 15, 16. When you're married, you can have a baby. So that should solve that. Good thing they got outed to school officials. Sorry if that offends anyone, but it's the truth. Legal protections. Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, protects educational records but does not mandate specific security controls, requiring only reasonable methods to prevent unauthorized access. Child's Online Privacy Protection Act, COPPA, or COPPA, regulates data collection for children under 13, though schools often act as proxies to provide consent on behalf of parents. Children's Internet Protection Act, CIPA, requires schools to monitor online activities to block harmful content, which often serves as the legal basis for invasive surveillance software. So, there you go. Now, if you want sources, the radioactive oatmeal case, the official ACRI report, the ACRI final report, is the most comprehensive source, which it's the final report of the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments, commissioned by President Bill Clinton in 1944. Chapter 7 specifically details the science club at the Fernald State School. There are some congressional records. There's a congressional record from April 1994, and the Massachusetts State Task Force had a 1994 report titled A Report on the Use of Radioactive Materials in Human Subject Research. So, for the oatmeal case. For the Vanderbilt University case, with them giving radioactive drinks to pregnant women, you can have an official ACRI final report from 1995, which is, like I said, the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments, established by Bill Clinton to investigate Cold War-era testing. Their final report contains extensive documentation on the Tennessee Vanderbilt Nutrition Project. The DOE has records, and so does the National Security Archive. There are some legal records, Kraft versus Vanderbilt University from 1998. And there's a book called The Plutonium Files. The New York Times and Washington Post also did some stuff about that. And for the hepatitis case, there was Dr. Saul Krugman's research, which his findings were published in major journals. The Willowbrook Hepatitis Studies Revisited Ethical Aspects. The Beecher Report from 1996. And the Willowbrook Letters. 1966. I think I said that. Maybe I didn't. The Willowbrook Consent Decree from 1975 is a federal court judgment. And there are some New York State archives, and along with Geraldo Rivera's expose from 1972. And finally, there is the EFF, which can verify what I've said about the school surveillance. There's the Human Rights Watch and the Center for Democracy Technology. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Send this video to someone who has kids. Thank you.